An economic model is a theoretical construct representing component processes by a set of variables or functions describing the logical relationships between them. Basic definition. If anyone has studied traditional or market-based economic modeling, a great deal of time is often spent on things such as price trends, behavioral patterns, utilitarianistic functions, inflation, currency, fluctuations, and so forth. Rarely, if ever, is anything said about public or ecological health. Why? Because the market is, again, life-blind and decoupled from the science of life support and sustainability. It is simply a proxy system. The best way to think about this economy is not in the traditional terms, but rather as an advanced production, distribution, and management system which is democratically engaged by the public through a kind of participatory economics that facilitates input processes such as design proposals and demand assessment, while filtering all actions through what we will call sustainability and efficiency protocols. These are the basic rules of industrial action set by natural law, not human opinion. As noted prior, neither of these interests are structurally inherent in the capitalist model, and it is clear that humanity needs a model that has this type of stuff built right into it for consideration. Structural system goals. All economic systems have structural goals, which may not be readily apparent. Market capitalism's structural goal, as described, is growth and maintaining rates of consumption high enough to keep people employed at any given time, and employment requires also a culture of real or perceived inefficiency, and that essentially means the preservation of scarcity in one form or another. That is its structural goal, and good luck getting a market economist to admit to that. This model goal is to optimize technical efficiency and create the highest level of abundance we possibly can within the bounds of earthly sustainability, seeking to meet human needs directly. System overview. One of the great myths of this model is that it is centrally planned. I'm sure many of us have heard this. What this means, based on historical precedent, is that it is assumed that an elite group of people basically will make the economic decisions for a society. No, this model is a collaborative design system, CDS, not centrally planned. It is based entirely upon public interaction facilitated by programmed open source systems that enable a constant dynamic feedback flow that can literally allow the input of the public on any given industrial matter, whether personal or social. Now, a common question when you bring that up, they say, well, who programs this system? The answer is everyone and no one. The tangible rules of the laws of nature, as they apply to environmental sustainability and engineering efficiency, is a completely objective frame of reference. The nuances may change to some degree over time, but the general principles remain. Over time, the logic of such an approach will also become more rigid because we learn more as we perfect our understandings, and hence less room for subjectivity in certain areas that might have had it prior. Again, I'll be describing this more so in a moment. Also, the programs themselves will be available in an open source platform for public input and review, absolutely transparent. And if someone noticed a problem or unapplied optimization strategy, which would probably be the case, it is evaluated and tested by the community. Kind of like a Wikipedia for calculation, except much less subjective than Wikipedia without the moody administrators. Another traditional confusion surrounds a concept which has become, to many, the defining difference between capitalism and everything else. And it has to do with whether the means of production is privately owned or not. And this is replete throughout tons of traditional literary treatments on capitalism when they describe how it's the ultimate manifestation of human behavior as a society. If you don't know what this means, the means of production refers to the non-human assets that create goods, such as machines, tools, factories, offices, and the like. In capitalism, the means of production is owned by the capitalist by historical definition, hence the origin of the term. I bring this up because there has been an ongoing argument for a century that any system which does not have its means of production owned as a form of private property is just not going to be as economically efficient as one that has, or maybe not even efficient at all. This, as the argument goes, is because of the need for price, the price mechanism. Price, which has a fluid ability to exchange value amongst virtually any type of good due to its indivisibility of value, creates indeed a feedback mechanism that connects the entire market system in a certain narrow way. Price is a way to allocate scarce resources amongst competing interests, for sure. Price, property, and money translate, in short, subjective demand preferences into semi-objective exchange values. I say semi because it is, again, a relative, culturally relative measure only, absent most every factor that gives true technical consideration to a given material or good. In other words, it has nothing to do with what the materials or goods are, it's just a mechanism. Perhaps the only real technical data, in fact, I would say, that price embraces, very crudely, relates to resource scarcity and labor energy. Resource scarcity and labor energy. You can basically find that in price. So in this context, the question becomes, moving on, is it possible to create a system that can equally, if not more efficiently, facilitate feedback with respect to consumer preference, demand, labor value, and resource or component scarcity without the price system, subjective property values, or exchange? And of course there is. The trick is to completely eliminate exchange and create a direct control and feedback link between the consumer and the means of production itself. The consumer becomes part of the means of production, and the industrial complex, if you will, becomes nothing more than a tool that is accessed by the public to generate goods. In fact, as alluded to prior, the same system can be used for just about any societal calculation, virtually eliminating the state government, in fact, and politics as we know it. It is a participatory decision-making process. And as an aside, as far as the fact that there will indeed always be scarcity of something in the world, which is the very basis of existence of price, market, and money, human beings can, again, either understand the dire need to exist in a steady state relationship with nature and the global human species for cultural and environmental sustainability, or not. We can either continue down the same path we are now, or become more aware or responsible to the world and to each other, seeking post-scarcity and using natural law rules of sustainability and efficiency to decide how to best allocate our raw materials, or not. But I think the former is the most intelligent path. I state that because, again, this resource argument always comes down to the abstractions of resources. The abstraction of scarcity. It never qualifies what scarcity is in certain contexts. It doesn't separate scarcity, and that's the fatal flaw between human needs and human wants. Also, I want to point out another fallacy, which of this private ownership of the means of production, a fallacy of this broad concept is its culture lag. Today, we are seeing a merger of capital goods, consumer goods, and labor power. Machines are taking over human labor power, becoming capital goods, while also reducing in size to become consumer goods. I'm sure most everyone in this room has a home paper printer. When you send a file to print from your computer, you are in control of a mini version of a means of production. What about 3D printers? In some cities today, there are now 3D printing labs which people can send their design to print in physical form. The model I'm going to describe is a similar idea. The next step is the creation of a strategically automated industrial complex, localized as much as possible, which is designed to produce, through automated means, the average of everything any given region has found demand for. Think about it. On-demand production on a mass scale. Consider for a moment how much storage space, transport energy, and overrun waste is immediately eliminated by this approach. I think the days of large, wasteful, mass-producing economies of scale are coming to an end. Well, if we want them to.